सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. So there are several things that appear contradictory. They are not, but they appear so. Like, a simple example would be, in seeking enlightenment, or that state that we call enlightenment, you need the mind. Without the mind, you cannot start. You can't even begin. You won't even have the thought of beginning. And yet, it is that mind that stands in your way. Why is that? It's because the mind creates images that are not real. And yet, they get very solidified. Like somebody says to me, suppose, nobody does this, thank God, but somebody says, Ramanand, you're stupid. I hear the words, I know the meaning of the words, and I react. Whereas the correct thinking would be, whoever says that, how much do they really know about me? Very, very, very little. The biggest proof of that is, I know myself very little, so how can another person know me? Whatever they experience, something they did not like, to that they are responding, saying, Ramanand, you are stupid. My mind, if I am not careful, immediately translates that into saying, they are saying, I am stupid. That's a very big mistake the mind makes. Because what I call I barely know who that I is, the real I is. How can another person know that? They are simply reacting to something they felt, and it's a reaction coming from their mind, their feeling. Perhaps it has a little transactional reality. But beyond that, it has no reality at all. If you ask yourself, how much do you know yourself? Think of this sense you had of yourself, the sense you had, meaning your mind had, when you were a little kid. You grew up a little, started playing with other kids, you had a different sense of I. You went to school, you started interacting with the teacher, you had a different sense of I. You went to college or university, you had a different sense of I. You got a job, you had a boss that you liked or disliked, you had a different sense of I. You gave up the job, decided to do yoga, you had a different sense of I. Which one of these I is correct? They are all correct from the perspective of the situation in which you were. But that is extremely small, very limited. The real I, called Atma or Atman, does not react to any of this. In fact, if your sense says that, my Atma reacts to something, then you don't understand what Atma is. Atma doesn't change. There is no change. But people take this into even meditation. I gave you this exercise. Imagine or think of somebody that you like, think of somebody you don't like. Try to see the similarity between those two. There are differences, obviously, but there are similarities. And if you examine it, you will find there are many more things that are similar between these two people. Some people who have tried this exercise through what they call meditation, and they come to a conclusion which is somewhat correct, that these two people disappear. There's only me. Because anything you know about these two people that you think of is coming from your mind. Then the second part of the exercise was that after seeing the two of them, the similarities between them, now see between you and those two is also very much similarity. Part of the reason behind doing the exercise is to begin to see that your whole world experience that you often relate to outside things is really not outside. Okay? It's really your experience, your mind. If your mind stops working, the world disappears completely. It is like being in a dream. Everything in the dream appears to be real while you are in that dream space, the dream time. Upon waking up, what happens to that? Disappears. Which means any experience you have that you think is coming because of some outside event may be triggered by an outside event, but it is in your mind that that happens.
Ramanand,
yes.
Do you consider emotions, feelings part of the mind?
Emotions and feelings, are they part of the mind? No and yes. No, because they are not part of the mind. Yes, because what most people experience with emotions and feelings is some interpretation that their mind makes. And the two are very different. Like, to go back to the example I was giving, somebody says, Ramanand, you are stupid. If I understand what they are saying and within relation to what, there is no problem. Mind immediately translates, that this person is saying something about me that is true. When very little examination shows that it can't be true because they can't know me. But I make it true. If I totally understand that something this idiot experience is now he is translating and giving a verbal expression to it, but it's his, not mine, then there's no problem with it whatsoever. At the most, what my mind would say is, this person misunderstands something. Maybe needs a little clarification. Beyond that, it has no value whatsoever. But I give it a value. So, are the emotions a product of the mind? Yes and no.
Because I was just thinking that maybe sometimes emotions I think of coming from the body.
Little louder.
I think of emotions being more in the body, feelings. But usually I think sometimes it's a reaction to what the mind is thinking or perceiving.
It is. Whether that perception is correct or not is a huge question. So, in dealing with this, first I want to say something about meditation. Most people's meditation, as I know, is involving their minds. Meditation in reality has nothing to do with the mind. Nothing. And yet, it has a lot to do with the mind to start with. But as you go through the stages, slowly the sense comes that it has nothing to do with the mind. We'll get into that later if necessary. But considering what is happening in your life, in my life, in your life, Patanjali describes the afflictions called kleshas in Sanskrit. And there are 5 types of kleshas he talks about. They sum up really all of the kleshas. But he divides them into 5 parts. First is avidya. Vidya means knowledge. Avidya means no knowledge. Means lack of knowledge is the first klesha. Actually, it's the most important of the 5 kleshas. Why? Because it gives rise to all the other 4. The next klesha he describes is called asmita. Very brief translation would be a sense of ego, which of course none of us have. But that's the second major affliction. Created by the mind, created by the thinking, incorrect thinking. And yet we make it very, very real all the time. And not only with regard to the kind of thing I was giving example of, like somebody says you are stupid, but even my sense of I am a father. I am a son. I am a brother of somebody. Somebody is my friend. What is the primary thing required when my mind does that? Is I'm separating what I call myself from all the others. When a real examination shows that there are no others, there is only you, if you understand what that you is. In other words, the mind is such that none of these kleshas interfere. So those are the first 2 kleshas. The next klesha is called raga, my attachments to things, dveshas, things that I don't like, that I try to push away. Those are 4 kleshas. The last one, in some sense very, very important one, but not very well dealt with in most books, is avinimesha. My clinging to life or fear of death, which immediately raises the question, who dies? The body dies, the mind dies, the senses may die. I die is a mistake. It shows lack of understanding of what I is. I not only does not die, cannot die. In light of what we have discussed a little bit before, why can that not happen? Consider what I taught in the previous 2 classes is correct. In light of that, why can I not die?
Consciousness is neither created or destroyed.
Correct. Little more.
It has nothing. Consciousness has nothing to do with time and space. It eats it, absorbs it. So that is, we're intrinsically that is what we are. So
Yes.
we're unaffected by that.
Which is that consciousness, the big consciousness that we have talked about. Like you say, it absorbs time. It gives rise to time and space. Without that consciousness, there is no time, there is no space. So time depends on consciousness. It cannot do anything to the consciousness. that happens in time is created by my senses reacting to the time. Not because something happens to consciousness. To happen, the very word happen means time is required. So consciousness is not subject to time.
Ramanand, when you said, I think raga was attachments, when I hear that, like in Western psychology, attachments are relationships, is that what?
Relationships is one kind of attachment. You are hungry. That's an attachment. You are hungry, you want to eat food, the body requires food, correct. But it doesn't require a particular kind of food. Any nourishing food would be fine. What I want is something that tastes nice. And look at that also. Someone who grows up in a family eating hot, spicy food from childhood, they have to have that. Without that, they don't like the food. I grew up in a family where spicy food was not eaten like that. In fact, when I go to Indian restaurant, I have to tell specifically, I am an Indian, I look an Indian, my body is an Indian, but I don't eat spicy food. I had this experience when I was in London. I went to this restaurant. I told them very specifically that I do not want spicy food. The food came, it was spicy. So I called the waiter or the cook and said, I told you I don't want spicy food. He said, this is only little spicy. It may be little to you, to me it's very spicy. Avidya, asmita are two kinds of major afflictions. Third one was raga. You had a question about raga? Anything I like or I'm attached to is raga. It draws me, then it's a raga. If it does not draw me, then it's not a raga. It has no effect on me. Dvesha is opposite of raga. Something I don't like, I push away from, I get away from.
So it's kind of like the homework assignment.
You what?
It was like the homework assignment. Someone you like, someone.
Yeah, like the homework assignment. More people responded to this last homework, so that was nice. Homework, I want you to respond to the homework because it gives me a chance to see where your blockage is. If you don't respond, it's not a problem per se. But then in the next class, I don't know what is it that is blocking you. Homework is not given to test your knowledge. I'm not interested in what your knowledge is. None, zero interest. I want to find out where your blockage is. And blockages can be of variety. For example, in the homework I gave you, I said, choose two people, one that you like and one that you don't like. Try and see the similarity between them. One person, and I'm not picking on that person, okay, so don't get bent out of shape. But if the person he likes, he chooses his wife, who is strongly in love with his wife, knows his wife from day to day. It's a long relationship. On the opposite side, he chooses Donald Trump. Now, however much you dislike Donald Trump, you have no personal relationship with him at all. You don't really know him outside of what you get from newspapers. So they are not correct choices. If you take your wife to be one, the second person should be someone else in your family that you have disagreements with. Someone else wrote and said, I don't hate anybody, so how can I choose somebody? Okay, that's very good that you don't hate anyone. Then choose something you don't like in their behavior. And don't tell me that you don't dislike or don't not dislike anybody's behavior. Okay? Just as you like some people's behavior, there are people whose behavior you don't like. You don't hate them as a result, but you don't like that behavior. So those are kind of, don't choose somebody of one type on one side. On the other side, you choose someone that is totally unrelated. Okay? Then the example won't work.
And can it also be the same person? Like someone you both...
It can be
like,
same person if in
and-
your mind you can separate the two behaviors.
Yeah.
Definitely can be the same person. Eventually the thing to see is, why are you reacting like that? It has nothing to do with these two people. And some people quite correctly wrote that, these two people, as I said, they disappear. The boundaries disappear. Just a brief example of meditation right now. As you are sitting here, before you were given your name, which means when you were born, okay, imagine yourself to be in that state. You are just born. And you are bubbling with joy because creation is like that. I'm sure you have seen little babies that for no reason at all go, that's an expression of just being. Okay, as long as the child is fed, he is not sleepy, is awake, it will have this reaction for no reason at all. Why do you lose that? The first reason you lose it because ego comes in. To function in the world, that is necessary. But as far as meditation is concerned, it's a real interference. In that state, correct teaching will tell you, mind is not involved. There is only a sensation of being, unrelated to any particular sense organ. As long as your mind is involved, you are trying to be in meditation, you cannot be. Meditation is a very different state. And yet for most people, it is necessary to use the mind to meditate. You cannot do it without that. Like Sri Aurobindo states very correctly, ego is the helper, ego is the killer. You need the ego to want to get better. And yet it is that ego that stands in your way. Same with the mind. You need the mind to deal with problems created by the mind. So mind is necessary for you to be able to investigate. But that mind, you have to see that the problem really comes from the mind by having incorrect conclusions. We'll talk about sort of fear of death very briefly. I have come across many people in conversations or in actual situations where they say, no, I'm not afraid of death. They are not lying. They believe that when they say that. But in fact, they are afraid of death. Only they haven't faced a situation that pushes that frontal. A good proof of that is read biographies of great leaders of a war. Not politicians who sit in the office and direct, but the actual commanders who go in the field. Okay? every one of them that I have read says, we try to tell our troops not to be afraid, but we are afraid ourselves. That's an honest expression. You cannot be not afraid. Some of the bravest soldiers known are the Gurkhas from Nepal. Amazing soldiers. The British officers who commanded these soldiers were saying that, these people have no sense of fear. And if you talk to a little Gurkha kid, he would tell you that, I don't know fear. Because he's indoctrinated with that.
Isn't the fear from the ego?
Yeah, the fear what?
The fear of death is from the ego. Because, right, the ego is a construct, it's not real.
Yes. What does fear of death require? As a primary thing, it requires a belief in death. Means I will disappear. That's not going to happen. The real I is not going to disappear even if you want it to disappear. It can't. Consciousness that we call I, cannot disappear. The body loses consciousness. It is like saying, because of the sun, the flower blossoms. For some reason, at some point, the flower stops blossoming. The flower says, what? I have lost sun. No, you have lost the ability to express the sun, that's all. When my mind loses ability to express Ramanand, it can't be called death of Ramanand. It's death of what mind created as Ramanand. See, what happens is our day-to-day experiences of our mind, body, senses, there is constant reinforcement of me as this ego. Relatively, even if you sit in meditation every day, you sit there for a limited time. What happens in that limited time, assuming it is correct, is not carried through the day. It is only carried through the day as you mature and you are enlightened. Then anything you see around you, you feel around you, you sense around you, is not misinterpreted. Then you are free. The big joke about being free that way is, you were never not free to start with. Your mind made a mistake, made the ego real, and that is not free. But the ego doesn't become free ever. It cannot. Why?
The ego is not real.
Because it's not real. The sense of ego saying I am not free is a mistake. It cannot be free or not free. It just is irrelevant.
Well, I think I would say it's a perception, because I think most people think they are their ego. So then they don't feel free, because they're not who they really are. They're this external construction.
Yeah, the whole problem belongs to the ego. If the ego did not bother you, you don't need any yoga class except to entertain yourself. When you consider any affliction, go back to avidya, lack of correct knowledge. Okay? That has 4 stages. The first stage that Patanjali describes is called avastha, means state, where what is called samagri means the things needed for that particular affliction to exist. All those things are there. But they are prashupta, means they are in a sleeping state. Like, take an example. You go to school, you begin to go to school, you have a teacher. You love this teacher. So any sense of being afraid of the teacher or not liking the teacher is not there. Potentially it is there. Someday it will push your button. But there is a state where it is only there in potential but has no expression. That is called the prashupta state. Potentially there but has no expression. The funny part is, through meditation, correctly done, you want to take all of the kleshas and put them back into that state where they are potentially there but not really. They have no outer expression. The next stage is where there is a manifestation. It's called tanu. There is a manifestation, but not strong enough to bother you, which means you are matured enough to see it and sensibly put it away. Like, take the same example, the child goes to school and the teacher says, "Why didn't you do your homework?" The child's interpretation is, "Teacher loves me." Not that the teacher is offended by me. So, something comes up, the child has some judgment about it, like, "I did not do my homework and that does not please the teacher." So it has come up, but it is not finding too much outer expression. Okay? So that's called tanu stage, where instead of being totally dormant, this sensation has come up, but doesn't bother you. You can put it away to the side. An adult might do it like something like, I am thinking of my father. As he got older, anything that happened that was not to his liking, he had great ability to say, "Ishwar Ichha," God's wish.
God's what?
Huh?
I didn't hear God's.
God's wish.
God's wish. Okay.
Ichha means wish. Okay. So immediately something happened, he would look at it and say, "This is not nice," but Ishwar Ichha, God's will. Something he can't control, something that happens that he doesn't like, but he immediately says, "I have no control over it, God's wish." He was able to put it away. Not everything, but most things he could do. So that is the tanu stage. The next stage is called vichina state, where the expression is stronger, but not full blown. To go back to the example of the child, the teacher punishes the child physically. So the child doesn't like it and reacts to that. Somehow wants to block it. But the same child, instead of being in the first or second grade, is now in the 10th grade and 12th grade. That child says, "I want to hit this teacher." That stage is called udar. Means it has got a lot of outer expression. Is bent out of shape, as it were. And if he can, he would hurt the teacher. I have a younger cousin. He was telling me that there was a particular teacher in the high school who wanted to punish students physically. And he would say something like, "You think you have come, this is your father's garden that you are roaming in." This kind of expression. My cousin was strong enough to deal with this teacher physically. So he tells the teacher, he says, whatever else you say, don't bring my parents into it or I will hit you. So the teacher says to him, you are Ramanand's cousin. Ask Ramanand about it. My cousin says, I don't need to ask Ramanand. I'm talking to you. I will hit you next time you mention my father like this in the class. And the teacher backed off. His name was Ashok. His name is Ashok. But he was a karate champion. He could easily beat this teacher. I could beat the teacher, but I would never think of doing that. My fear was that, if I do anything to the teacher, it is immediately going to go to my father, who was a teacher in the same school. Ashok did not have that fear. So those are 4 stages of any klesha that you have. Asmita, the next stage, ego, is the same thing. It can have the first stage where it is there, potentially it is there, but it has got no outer expression. The Tanu stage would be where it has some outer expression, but you are able to control it. Like an example would be, you grow up, you have a job, and you have a boss. You don't like the boss, but you are not going to express anything to the boss. That is called the Tanu stage. You want forever because of fear or whatever reason, but you don't tell anything to your boss. But in your mind, there is a reaction. You don't like the boss. If for no other reason, then you think, I'm not paying enough for my services. Interesting, when you get a job, you are happy that you got a job. Very quickly you compare yourself to others in the same office and say, I'm not being paid as well as somebody else. When I used to go to Pune, I have a friend in Pune who was also Mr. Anga's student. He called me to his home for lunch. And the lunch was prepared and served by a woman that was working for him. So he started telling me about this worker. He says, Raman, this is amazing woman. I tried to give her a pay raise and she says, no. What I get is enough. This is highly unusual. But she was like that. And I had some brief conversations with her. I didn't speak Marathi, so it was limited. But she literally was like that. Very satisfied with what she was getting, did not want anything more. Her interpretation was that if I get a little more, or if I accept a little more, it will spoil me, then I want it even more. Show me most people who are employed, are they like that? When they get that little more, they want a little more, and then a little more. There is no end to that little more.
It's also the nature of capitalism.
Nature of?
Capitalism and like the economy must keep growing or something. It won't work. It has to keep growing, and so there's just this.
Yeah, but I'm talking of individual. He has no concern with the economy growing. He wants his income to be more, that's all.
Right, but I mean, I think people in this economy, it's also extra, like you have to produce more, or you're going to get fired.
But I think what you're saying is correct, but it would apply to people who have no idea of economy at all. Like an ordinary worker who is not sophisticated at all, just wants his pay, working in a field in India. It's the same attitude, I want some more. He doesn't understand anything about economy. But he wants more.
Yes, and so I mean, from my perspective, the more sophisticated economy is actually the one that is inherently ignorant in terms of how it affects
like to be paid more for your classes? Honestly.
I work privately right now, and I feel good about my fee.
Okay, I'm not asking you to rationalize it. Okay?
Uh-huh.
What is the base feeling? Every yoga teacher would have this feeling. You know, they are not demanding more, but they would like more. You know, mostly by what? By comparison with others.
I think it's comparison, and it's also being in a situation where, you know, the rents are higher, buying is even higher, and, you know, it's just where there's this pressure of needing more to survive.
I have something to add to that because I have some experience working with teachers. At times that is true. At other times I've had experiences where someone would just literally get their certification and happen to know actually a lot of their background, and financially they were quite well off. However, this particular teacher asked and literally demanded much more because they had this training and said, I should have this as a result of teaching. So it was a little different situation. But I've seen that as well.
Your situation also, makes.
I will give you example, real example. I'm not going to name the people for obvious reason. One is a man, very prominent teacher. Okay. Another is a woman, also very well known. Okay. The two of them don't like each other, hate each other actually. Each one privately talking to me says, I don't know why he or she has so many students. I would like to have more students like her or him. Okay? So I talked to both separately. I said, look, there's a particular kind of student that comes to your class. There is another kind of student that goes to her class. If I took all her students, gave them to you, and took all your students and gave them to you, to her, you will both be immensely unhappy. They understood the logic of this, but continue to feel jealous of each other. To the point where, as I said, strongly hated each other. To this day. No, you both have enough students, 30, 40 people in a class. You can't handle more. But this is an insecurity. I am less popular than her in eyes of some students. That's not good enough. Now, if I look at both these people, they're not bad people. They might have their own problems. Who doesn't? Okay? So basically not bad people. I've seen both of them helping others who badly needed help, really genuinely helping, not expecting more in helping that particular person. Okay. Do want to appreciate it. I help so and so. They want that. So there is a little bit of avidya still left there. When you help another person with something that they badly need help and you are able to provide help, what should be your attitude? As a yoga teacher, let's say somebody has a back problem and you cure their back problem. They are grateful. You are also happy that it happened. What is your attitude towards it?
It's a blessing.
Thank God.
It's a blessing to have that capacity.
It's a blessing. It's a God-given blessing. Thank God you have the ability to help someone. Okay. If you have that attitude, you will feel even happier about what happens. But you must not do it for that happiness. It's a double-edged sword.
You also feel grateful for the teaching that you got that allowed you to do that. Like if I help somebody with a back pain, I don't really think that I'm helping the person. I'm thinking about the Stranga's teacher all the way back, how this system developed so that I was fortunate enough to be able to help someone.
Take it further. You are very correct. It's not I am that is helping. I got this knowledge from my teacher who got it from his teacher, from his teacher. Take it further. How far back would you go?
Just is.
Teacher of all teachers, God. It is divine knowledge. Nobody individually possesses it. Any knowledge you have, the ultimate source of that knowledge is God. This should be ridiculously clear in your mind. Never make a mistake with that. Not just with yoga, with any knowledge you have. Take a simple knowledge. When you were born, you could not walk. You learned to walk. Where the hell do you think that came from? Anything that you are able to do for which you have knowledge or ability, the ultimate source is God. Somebody who forgets it cannot call themselves a yoga teacher. Even if you make that mistake in day-to-day interactions with people, before you go to bed, spend not even 5 minutes, just 1 minute saying thank you. When you wake up, what is the first thought that comes to your mind? Thank God I'm still here. Because you may not be. In fact, a day will come when you will not be. This should be an automatic reaction, and trust me, I'm telling you from personal experience, if you cultivate that, you will be a happy person, just for that simple reason. I'm still here. Which means I'm here in a form where my relation, everything I like continues. A day will come when you will have no relation continuing, nothing. See, all the experience I have, basically I'm getting those experiences through my senses. From my eyesight, from my hearing, from smell, from taste, and the biggest one from touch. Okay. There are other senses also. We did not get into that. These are 5 major senses. Through these senses I have experience. What happens to that, see how quickly it translates into me. I see Janet. I have some relationship. I've known her for a long time. When I see her, naturally I get happy. Because she's constantly nice to me. I have never known a situation where Janet says anything to me that is not appealing to me. Okay. Maybe she's lying, I don't know. But there is a natural affiliation. What happens? I see her. How do I see her? Because of my eyes. Be careful. The eyes did the job of seeing. My conclusion is, I saw her. I completely forget. The eye saw her, but it's not really the eye. The mind saw her. Without the mind, the eye would not. Janet could be walking right past me and my mind is somewhere else, I won't see her. Even though my eyes are open. Directly looking at her, I won't recognize her. You all have that experience. Yes? So it's not the eyes that see. The seer in that example is the mind, not the eye. Is the mind the seer? Why is mind able to see?
The brain.
A mind more processes things.
Huh?
Like in the mind, we kind of process things, so it kind of like it builds upon our like previous experiences, but that's not the actual seer.
Correct. Mind is not the seer. What is the seer?
The I.
Yeah. I comes much later. First it is the I. Okay. When I say Ramanand, I saw Janet, it doesn't distinguish that it's the I that saw her. It immediately concludes I saw her. And rarely, if ever, questions what you are bringing up, that is the consciousness that sees. Without the consciousness, even the I is not capable of seeing. Seeing happened because of consciousness, which means because of a gift from God. We have to define God, which is a very big problem. What is God? See, different religions have created an idea of God. And even in a religion where that idea is reasonably clear, if you look at the population, they make the mistake.
Well, it seems like in most religions it started maybe with something more real, but it became more about power,
Power, fear,
more human. I mean,
Huh?
like more ego. That's what I want.
more ego, not
Yeah.
human.
Yeah.
Human itself is misunderstood. The ego. See, I'm born as a child. My sense of all nourishment and protection comes from my family. I grow a little older, I begin to play cricket or whatever else I do with other kids. Now my sense of family or society is my neighborhood. See what happens? I first drew a boundary around me. Then the boundary was around my family. Then the boundary was around my neighborhood, around my city, around my nation. Every time I draw a boundary, I'm drawing the boundary for what? Security. That boundary creates non-security. And unless I'm lucky, I never see that. Every boundary you draw around yourself is inherently creating insecurity, which is what I am fighting against. Think of yourself as you are. Where is your boundary? Don't answer me. Okay, just think about it. And just see that that boundary creates for insecurity.
Creates
Insecurity.
insecurity.
I draw the boundary because I want security. And yet, my mind drawing that boundary creates insecurity. Because what the mind says is, if I don't this boundary, if I do not have this boundary, somebody will take advantage of me. When everybody is like that. Most of us, may not be you particularly, individually, but most people lock their doors at night. Why?
Well, for the simple reason of security.
Now, I'm not suggesting that you from tonight don't lock your doors. Okay? Depends on where you live, what neighbor you live in.
Depends on the society that you grow up in. Because when I grew up in a small town in Scotland, we never ever locked the door. And my mother would put money for the butcher, for the baker on the table. They would take their own money, they wouldn't take anybody else's money. And even now, Paul going up in Brooklyn or Queens and me going up in Scotland, he's always very security conscious about locking doors. I probably leave my door open in San Francisco.
Now, I have a simple question of you. Would you rather be in that situation, wasn't that happier situation, where you did not even think of locking them?
I know, it's kind of a responsibility to have to lock a door.
Just, even though I lock my door, just to imagine how I felt when I did not have to lock the door was like immense freedom, tremendous joy. Who is letting off that joy? Me. Why? Because of fear. Fear based on what? Something that has never happened to me, but might have happened in the neighborhood. There are, let's say, 100 homes in the neighborhood, out of which 2 or 3 might have been broken into. Okay? Not at night when they are there, but when they are not even at home. Yet the fear that it will happen to me governs my life.
It's an interesting thing about the locking of the doors, because I'm a kid from the 70s here in San Francisco, and we didn't lock our doors. And then later, we started locking them. But then when we lived for a short time in Bolinas, we didn't lock the door. I was like, oh, this is a wonderful feeling. I'm feeling again. And then one night, it was a very strong, windy night, and the door was not locked, but the door opened, just kind of swung open. And then raccoons came in. So from that night on, I said, well, we have to lock the door now.
It's the fear of the raccoons. Trust.
I wonder how many animals living in what we call the jungle, complete bushland, how many of them lock their doors? None. But we being human, having more sense of security, have become more sophisticated, so we lock our doors. We are more stupid than those animals. All right. Very briefly, what Patanjali describes in this particular part is that which is not the real self is taken for real self. Very, very, very big mistake. But we all do it because of not just lack of knowledge, but because of fear. Lack of knowledge by itself can be dealt with. You can get the knowledge that you are not who you think you are. You are a conscious being, that's all. But to translate that into day-to-day behavior, very difficult. Because even as I know, my mind knows that I am Atman, I am not this body, I am not this mind. My fear of what will happen to this body-mind is immense, constantly repeated. Even with as simple a thing as I want to cross the road. I'm not going to ask you to answer this question, but the question is, consider what is the very worst that could happen.
Well, isn't the problem going into the future? Like fear is about what might happen,
Yeah,
whereas.
but even going into the future, mind imagines something, right? What is the very worst that could happen in your mind with regard to any situation? The answer is you will die, or at least get badly hurt. You are yoga students, even Vedanta students. Who will die, who will get hurt? Not you, your mind, your body. But the fear of that is so strong that theoretically one might be able to say, I don't worry, I don't care. But in reality, you do care. To get out of the situation, to really deeply inwardly say, Ishwaricha, God's will, is very difficult. But the answer given is, start practicing it with little things at least. There are many things that happen in your life that are not really of very serious consequence. And if it is something that the mind doesn't like, learn to say God's will. I am eating a mango. It's a very slippery fruit. It falls out of my hand. If I am a little kid, I will start crying, I lost my mango. As an adult, you say, it's a mango. But as a matured adult, learn to say, God's will. Some bugs will get to eat it. Okay. Thank you.